Hello, welcome to, we'll call it day one of the Uncommon Sense School. My name is Dr. Jason Baumsteiger. I am the founder of the school and, as you can see, its primary instructor. So today we're going to kind of explore what we built the school for, what it's all about, and that's the general idea of what is common sense. And as you're going to see as we go through the class today, you're going to find out that a lot of people have a misconception of what that is, and they have expectations that are unfair. And then when those expectations aren't met, we have issues. And so rather than deal with all of that, we're just going to kind of explore what common sense is. And then we're going to get on the same page about it. And then I'm going to kind of explore how the school feeds into all of that idea. So the idea is to get you to come along on our journey. That's why we have our little backpack friend here, is we want to equip you with the tools necessary to get you through life. But in order to do that, we have to make you aware of what's missing in your backpack, because those are the things that you have to take with you. And one of those things, it turns out, is common sense. So how would you describe common sense right now, at this point in your life? If I said, hey, I need you to define it, what is it? A lot of people would kind of hem and haw and not really be quite sure what that is. Right? They would kind of describe generalities and all that, but then that really wouldn't be all that common, would it? So the traditional sense of what common sense was is knowledge, judgment, and taste, which is more or less universal, right? Which is held more or less, again, without reflection or argument. It's basically a generally agreed upon thing. This was the traditional way that common sense was thought of. The weird thing about that is if you go look at the modern definition, it's very different. Now it's something as simple as good sense and sound judgment in practical matters. Okay, that's not so bad. What about the ability to think and behave in a reasonable way and to make good decisions? So we went from universal to kind of very generic sounding things, because I've underlined them here. All of the underlying words are subjective. What is good? What is sound? Everybody's going to approach that differently, which would make it uncommon. We can't all agree on what's good or sound, so how can common sense be relating to words that aren't common? It's odd. It's an odd thing to go about, but that's the modern definitions. So where did we go wrong? Where did we change? Why did we get off universal, right? Or generally agreed upon by everybody, right? So we'll start with what Ben Franklin used to think of. He said, the problem with common sense is that it's not all that common. That's true. But we assume that it is. Okay? So what do I mean when I say assume? What do I mean when I say common? So on the graphs up here, you're like, oh, it looks like a bunch of pie pieces. Okay, maybe you're hungry. You should probably have lunch. Okay? But if you didn't, if we start out with just general concepts here, I'm starting from your neighborhood, something very local to you, and we're working all the way up to like all of humans. So there are certain general concepts that are universal to all humans, but may not necessarily be known by a specific person in your neighborhood. But as we move to specific concepts or shared experiences, that entire thing changes. So now if you want to have specific things, it's going to be more common in a local neighborhood around people who have had similar experiences as you've had. So then in the neighborhood, it's common, but for all of humans, it becomes uncommon. But if we're talking about general concepts, it might be universal to all humans, but maybe different in your particular neighborhood. What that means is common sense isn't common. Or common sense is common depending upon the context that you're looking at it. But how many of you reflect on that idea? How many of you really say like, hey, how I apply my common sense is specific to what I'm talking about? Or do you just apply it broadly? I think you know the answer to that. Okay? So put that in your brain, let it mess around for a bit. Now I want you to take the next one. When did you acquire common sense? When did you get it? You're like, shouldn't you know the answer to that? Like, oh, I got it here, or I learned about it there. Was there a time in your life where you can think back and say like, yeah, this is when I acquired common sense? No, nobody really thinks about it, right? Why? Why don't we know this stuff? Why isn't it there? Was it conditional upon where you lived? Back to the previous graph with the pie pieces. Was it your neighborhood, so you knew a specific thing? For example, you're walking down the street and everybody in the neighborhood knows you don't talk to Mr. Smith's dog. If you try and pet that dog, it's going to bite you. Everyone knows that. It's common sense to the entire neighborhood. But if an outsider happened to be visiting, they might try and pet that dog. It wouldn't be common to them. Okay? So when did you experience all of this stuff? And I think you can see where I'm trying to lead you to. Was it a one-time experience, a repeated pattern? Where did it come from? Was it your childhood? So I like Albert Einstein. He says, common sense is the collection of prejudices acquired by age 18. And nowadays we use the word prejudice, we're a little more specific about it, but it basically means how you look at things. Most of it you acquired how you look at things by age 18. Albert Einstein, he wasn't exactly a dummy, so I think we'll kind of take his word for that one. But okay, so when did I get it? So I must have got it in my childhood. That's what made it common. I was having common experiences with other people, right? So then we all kind of understood something. But was I having common experiences with the world? With my whole state? With my whole county? With my whole city? Generally, no. So then what am I talking about when I'm assuming commonality? What level am I looking at? And then you might have gone in a different direction. You're like, well, I don't really, what do you mean when? How is it a when? You're like, I don't even know how I acquired common sense. Like, how did I get it? I always feel like I've just had it. Is it just known to me? So that needs to ask something difficult. So there are two philosophies on how they approach common sense nowadays in terms of how you kind of learn something. One is rationalism, right? Where that's reason rather than experience is the foundation of certainty. To simplify that, I would say you were taught it. You didn't have to see it. Somebody just explained it to you and you're like, okay, I'm good with that. That would be rational. Empiricism is you had to see it happen or have it happen to you. That's how you develop that commonality, right? So if you watched your friend get bit by Mr. Smith's dog, you're not going to go and stick your hand in there either. That would be empiricism. But if I was your dad and I was to say like, hey, listen, Mr. Smith's dog bites. Don't put your hand in there. And you're like, okay, that's good. And you just went with that, that would be rationalism. You never actually saw it happen or did it to yourself, but you took my word as your dad and said like, okay, that's reasonable. I won't do that. How did you acquire the common sense then? Which of those two? Was it all of one? Was it all of the other? Right? I mean, seriously, did somebody teach you all of it? So was it all rationalism? You're like, no. Nobody taught me all my common sense. Do you remember anybody sitting you down in class, your third grade teacher, and like, okay, we all understand that grabbing stoves that are hot is really bad, right? Maybe when you were 2, so your parents taught you some things, but that was mostly empiricism. That wasn't rational. They didn't just explain it to you and you're like, I'm good. Thanks, Mom. Not going to grab the big hot oven. Okay? Or did most of it come through experience and observation? Listen, I'm not here to tell you which way is right or wrong. That's why I said it's still debated philosophically, which is we generally are the product of what? A little bit of both. Or there's even a third part that might have jumped into your brain, which is, was it instinct? Did I just inherently know not to grab the hot thing? Did I inherently know not to pet the dog with the giant teeth? Right? Was that just instinct? Did somebody really have to tell me? The big teeth look mean. Don't put my hand in there. And you're probably looking at yourself, you're like, this is stupid. Isn't this common sense? This is like moronic. That's the point. That's the hard part about talking about common sense. It should be common. But how did you learn it? Right? The commonality means you had to have an experience with it in some form. Somebody either taught it to you or you went through it. You didn't just inherently know everything. It wasn't all instinct. Okay? We have problems in our country all the time where most people would assume, like, duh, don't grab the fire. And then people are still grabbing the fire. It's a very odd thing to have to talk about common sense. And most of us dismiss it because we just like, oh, no, I have this. but you don't. You don't, okay? So maybe I want you to go back and look at, well, who in your life basically showed you the way to your common sense? Mom, dad, uncle, friend, teacher, anything? Or was it something that's a little more challenging, something we talk a lot about in the school, which is how much of society, social media, TV, movies, how much of that taught you what to think or feel about common sense? Are they controlling your ideas because there's no other way for you to learn that material? And they're bombarding you with a particular way of looking at it. Does that make it common, or does it just make them have the power so that you see it all the time and therefore you assume commonality? I know. It's really deep. I'm being really deep. Day one, you're like, hit me with too much, Dr. B. Okay, I understand. But there's difficulty and complexity in commonality, in common sense. It's not as easy as you think it is. Okay? So let's try a simple example. Most of you probably can't see the picture. It's a bunch of cannibals. You're like, why are you showing me this? This is disgusting. It is disgusting. But let's just imagine, for a sake, you were born into a cannibalistic society. You're a baby, you're born there. They eat human beings, right? You go through life, it's a very normal thing. Everybody does it. You've never left your little island, so it's just very normal. Would you assume that it's common for people to eat other people? Of course it is. You've been conditioned to think that. You have no reason to suspect otherwise. Then let's say we come steal you off of your little island and we put you in the rest of the world. And now you're like, hey, can I go eat that guy? No, you can't do that. That's wrong. What's wrong with you? What kind of horrific person are you? And you're like, what do you mean? Everybody does it. What? And everybody around you is like, are you nuts? Everyone knows that you don't eat other people. You're like, wait, I don't know. How am I? Am I not everyone? Is this universal? Or is that just, do I have bad judgment, sound reasoning, good intentions? You see, all vague, vague, vague. Where did I learn my commonality? Okay? So how would we explain to this cannibal, based on their entire life experience, giving you Albert Einstein as the example, that eating people is bad? Whereas the vast majority of us, not born on the island, we just take it for granted. We might even, I bet if you asked enough people, they would say it's just instinct. I know better than to eat other human beings. It's just because of something you've just put out there. So it's not as easy as you think, but it's forgotten, it's ignored, it's insulting. And so it creates an emotional response when I talk about something so simple. When I talk about something simple, you're like, wait, no, I haven't thought about it, because you want to make everything complex. Well, common sense is supposed to be simple. So in theory, you should be able to handle this fairly well, but I bet it's making some of you uncomfortable. You're uncomfortable because you're realizing, and maybe second guessing, everything that you believe to be common may not in fact be so. And you don't know where you learned it, and you don't know how you know it, and yet if something was to go wrong, like this person was to come into your life, you would be like, oh my gosh, you can't eat people. So you would be emotional about it on this person like it's somehow their fault. They didn't know to know. So how can you judge them for that? Okay? So does that mean that common sense is bad? Is my friend jumping off of a bridge with just a little rubber band attached to his feet? Is that a good idea? That doesn't seem like common sense to me. That seems kind of stupid. Like, why am I risking my entire life so I can have 8 seconds of free falling? Right? Wouldn't you rather have a parachute? You're like, nah, rubber band. That's all I need. Let's jump right over a river. But there he is, having the time of his life. Does he lack common sense? Is it common for people, human beings, to jump off of bridges with rubber bands attached to their feet? I guess it depends on how you're looking at it. Okay? So let's address the major problem with common sense. It's actually fairly simple. Everything I'm talking about is very simple. It's what the uncommon sense school does. We take things that people want to make complex and we make them simple, because that's how you build something. You build something by starting with the simple things, and then you get more complex as you go. But you have to make sure the simple things are right first. So in my school, I talk about it a lot. You need to build a foundation. It's simple, it's straightforward. The complexity of the house and the colors and the furniture and all that comes later. But the house is only as good as its foundation. So if you're afraid of the simple, straightforward things, when life gets tough, the house falls down. Foundation matters. So how much of the things that you would attribute to common sense fall into assumption? An assumption is perceived truth without proof. It's something your mind has kind of created. You're like, no, 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 that's true. Well, do you have any real proof of it? No. Do you see that's a problem? Like, I've been watching too much social media lately, and yes, I'll be the first to admit that's terrible. But I'll see a lot of protests, and they'll go up to a protester, and they're like, why are you protesting this thing? You're like, is it this? Is it that? And they can't give you an answer. So they've just assumed that this is a major problem, but then they don't actually have any proof that it is. They've just heard things and kind of put it together, and so it's perceived truth. No, 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 I think this is what's going on. I kind of heard this, or I kind of know that. Oh, well, what did you hear exactly? Did you go follow up? Do you know if that's true? No, you just went with it. And then everybody else in that group of protests is assuming the same thing. You don't see the problem in that? So there's commonality. Everybody thinks cannibalism is fine in the group, but everybody else on the outside is like, what about expectations? That's the other thing that tears us up all the time, is that not only do we assume, but then we expect people to react to our assumptions. Like, I can't believe you would eat human beings, right? Your expectation is, of course you wouldn't do that. No one would do that. That's ridiculous. You're assuming that they went through a similar experience as you did. You're assuming they came from similar background, similar access to a neighborhood, a teacher, parents, all of it. And we wonder why we're all off, right? Why are we all off? Why doesn't everybody actually have common sense? Because what happens to you is not what happens to everyone else, especially in today's world. We're not all growing up in the same backyards together, same neighborhoods, having similar experiences. We are one big world now, whether through social media or other sources, or just simply that tomorrow you could get on a plane and be in another country, another part of the world. And everything's very different there. And if you take your assumptions and your expectations there, you're going to be disappointed because they do things differently. Okay? So, where's a good example? I like to give examples in my school. I feel that it's always about good teachers. So I had a friend years ago. He was a professor, right? But before he really got his professor gig, he had to go through college, and he killed it. He was fantastic. Grad school, undergrad, he was smart as a whip. Crushing school, right? Finally got out, got through, got his PhD, did some postdocs, just killing it. Got a job, Division I professor, research professor. These are very, very difficult positions to get. You're an exceptional person if you can get that. So he's this new professor, right, at this school. And he starts out by trying to teach a little bit harder. He wants his material, he's trying to challenge his students. He's really trying to push them, right? And when you ask him about it, he would say like, well, yes. He's like, I feel like there wasn't enough challenge in school. So I feel like I need to be the one to come in and make these changes because students aren't learning enough. They're not being challenged. They're not moving. There's more. They're capable of more. Problem with it was students didn't agree with that particular philosophy. And so they were pushing back, complaints, lower grades. So there was a day where my friend, as he tells the story to me, he was in a faculty meeting. And he was complaining about his students. And he was kind of like, hey, I came to this school. I did all this stuff. Do we just have a bad batch of students? Are they not real bright here? Do we not draw from them? Like, what's going on? I don't think they're real bright. And again, as he tells it, there was this old faculty member sitting in the back. He didn't say anything the whole meeting. All the other teachers are kind of complaining. And at the end of the meeting, this old professor was like, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? He's like, yeah, sure. And so they go outside, and he's like, I need to remind you of something. You're assuming that the average student had the same experience that you did. But that is completely false. You were exceptional. You're a Division I professor, which means you're probably smarter than 90% of the entire planet, right? You have exceeded the average person in every conceivable way. That's a problem. That's a problem because your experiences, your expectations, and your assumptions are not realistic for what your students are actually going through. So what to you seems, well, that should be fairly easy, to them is still ridiculously challenging. He's like, so if you want to be a good professor, you need to go find wherever your students are and teach them from that point up, not just make an assumption based on your personal experiences. Of course, my friend wasn't super excited about hearing that, but he was also like, you're absolutely right. That's totally true. That's totally true. That's what I'm doing. And he went out and in the next year and he tried all new stuff and he tried to relate to his students, and believe it or not, he won Professor of the Year the next year. So the problem with common sense is, again, simple. We need to put the common back in it. We need to put the common back in it. We need to stop at the assumptions and the expectations. So what do people really mean when they say they want to return to common sense? Again, I told you I got lost in social media recently, and I hate myself for it, but I did. There's a big push out there where everybody's talking about, we got to get back to common sense. We got to get back to that. What do they mean? What is that really about? And it doesn't matter politically or anything else. It just seems to be that everybody wants to get back to this magical thing, like when everybody knew what they were talking about. So what does that mean? What are they really calling for? I would argue that they're trying to call back to a time when it was their version of common, so that they felt more comfortable, whether it's politically, religiously, whatever, right? And so they want to have some sort of common sense revolution to get back to conceptually how they felt comfortable in society, when they felt like everybody generally understood what they were doing, okay? You already see where I'm going with this? What's the problem with most of that? The vast majority of people, though, really aren't seeking common ideas so much as they're doing what nowadays? They're trying to validate their my truths, right? So the problem with my truth is not for that individual. It's the problem with it's not common. It's unique to you. So that would make it your truth, but not truth for everybody else. So that would not be common sense. Do you understand? We would be getting away from common sense because it wouldn't be common. It would be specific to you. So how is that a problem? Is that what people are calling for? Are they calling for trying to do something which I like to call getting back on the same page? It's not that they want to deny other people their individuality. It's that they want to have certain common things that they can have expectations that are met by the majority of people. But we have a lot of trouble differentiating the two. We have a lot of trouble taking our own personal views and realizing that we live in a huge community. And by a huge community, I mean the world at this point. We are a whole lot of people as a human race. We are not as isolated as we once were, like this poor cannibalistic island. That's not a reality anymore. So when people are calling back to common sense and a common sense revolution, if you will, it's really people, I think they just want to get back on the same page. Let's all get back on the same page about fundamental things that we can all kind of trust. And so where is a good example of that? All right? Kick that around for a second. Because Ralph Waldo Emerson, who I really enjoy, believed that common sense is genius dressed in its work clothes. So it's something really, really important, but something very simple and practical. Right? And of course, he can say it so eloquently, and I'm very impressed, as we all should be. So have you ever stopped to consider how effective the rules of the road are when you go out and driving? I mean it. How effective is it? How effective is driving? Well, the stats say that there are only 1.3 deaths per 100 million miles traveled. That's a lot of travel to have basically 1 1/3 of a person killed. We must be doing something fairly right? We must be doing something fairly right, okay? 90% of all the accidents are also human error. And by human error, meaning they made a mistake, not they didn't know how to do something, not they didn't know the rules, not any of that stuff. It's always they just went against what they should have been doing. Okay? So the rules of the road system is an absolute masterclass in designing freedom with dependable structure. There are rules in place, but they are universal rules that everybody can abide by that gives everyone the freedom to go wherever they want to go, to be whoever they want to be. You get to be your own person while we can all do it together. Yeah? Yeah? Okay. So what if there were rules of the road for life? Right? Why don't we have those? Isn't that what people are really calling for when they're saying, hey, I want common sense? They want some relatable thing that everybody's doing that doesn't take away individual freedoms, right? So if you want your car to be bright pink, be bright pink. That's okay. But you still have to stop at the stop sign. You understand? That's what they're looking for. They're not trying to take away your right to have a pink car. They're trying to take away your ability to blow through a stop sign and kill somebody. We all need to abide by a certain set of boundaries, but they can be well designed so that we can all do our own thing. Okay? So what are the basic rules of the road? I mean, I just wrote down a couple of them. Move over when there's an emergency vehicle, right? Pay attention, use your mirrors, yield right of way, obey posted signs, okay? Stay in your lane. None of this is really, is this really hard? No, this is very simple, right? Rules of the road are very simple. Most people don't even think about them when they drive. You're off in your head, you're playing your music, you're doing whatever, okay? But they're impartial. So if you want to rock a shark van, go ahead. You still have to abide by the rules of the road. You can be anything you want to be, but you still need to stay in your lane. You need to stop at the stop sign. If there's an emergency vehicle, you move over to let that person, right? You're not the most important thing on the planet. For all of us to be able to exist together, we need to have commonality. We need to have rules of the road for life. That's what we're trying to develop with common sense. That's what we're trying to do, okay? But the interesting thing about rules of the road is not only do they have to be learned, rationalism, but they have to be experienced. So if you want to learn to drive a car, you have to take a test, a written test, where you have to go over what do the signs mean? How are they valuable? How far can I go? All of these things, that's rational. And then you have to take a driving test, the actual physical. You need both. That way, and even more so, they won't give you the keys to the car until you can prove that you're effective at both. You're not allowed because we, all the drivers, can't rely on you because you don't know the rules of the road. But how do you learn them if I don't force them? Okay? Do you see where I'm trying to go with this with life? Do you see what is, I mean, really think about it. Would you take a young adult that's never driven before in their life, and maybe is even from another part of the world where they've never even really been on the roads, and just throw them the keys and say, hey, good luck? No, that would be cruel. But that's what we do with young adults every single day. We just assume they'll, I don't know, you'll figure it out. Here are the keys. Good luck. Go drive. Don't run into anybody. You don't know the rules. You don't know what you're supposed to do or can or can't do. You don't have any of that. But, good luck with life. Maybe a couple things. The red ones, yeah, stop at those. Right? So maybe you got a little bit along the way, but you're like, what, red, what? Like, so you're stopping at the yield sign. Everybody's beeping at you, and you're like, what? I don't know, stop at the red one. That's what I learned. So how do we do this with life? How do we create rules of life that we can all do it? Well, we're getting kind of insulting when it comes to common sense. So for example, right here, this little sign, which you probably can't read, it says danger, thin ice. No kidding. So somebody was like, nah, I got this. I'm totally walking out on this. Does that look like something you should be walking out on? You can see all the way to the ground. You can see the length. No, but they still had to put the sign there. Life's kind of silly, don't you think? Where are we doing? Are we being insulting? No, we're not insulting. Do you know why that sign is there? Of course you do. Because somebody jumped in that thing. And then their claim was, I didn't know the ice wasn't thick enough. They said it. Common sense says, duh, duh. Somebody did it, so they had to put a sign up. That's what the rules of the road are. Somebody did something stupid, so we had to put a sign up. There has to be control. There has to be some regulations. You can drive your shark van everywhere you go. Got to stay in the lane. But by doing so, all of us can go to where we want to go safely, effectively, individually. You can go faster. You can go a little slower. You can play your music. You can not play your music. All of that is still there. Commonality doesn't take away individuality. Commonality allows coexistence of all of us, just like driving does. And then hopefully, if we start teaching these things, we don't have to put up signs for people to not jump in frozen lakes. Okay? You can't just assume that people are going to know this stuff and then have to make signs later. They have to be taught. They have to be experienced. So that is the mission of our school. That's what we're trying to do. We are no longer trying to, or maybe better ways, we're not assuming anymore that you just know all the rules of the life. Rather than assuming it, we basically want to make sure we're going to both explain it and in a lot of cases, make you experience it. Because that's how you'd pass a road test to show competency. We can't rely on you to come out into life and do all the life things if you don't know what you're doing, because it throws the whole system out. But if you come and you do the basic rules, you can be as successful as you want to be. You can do whatever you want. You can go wherever you want to go. But we all get to do that. So it's not my truth then applied to everyone else. It's commonality for everybody to be able to coexist and then do their own thing, with the understanding that in order to exist as a community, as a world, we all have to be on the same page about stuff. So that's what this Uncommon Sense School is. We're going to insult your intelligence a little bit and force you to actually go over the things like, hey, do you see ice there? You see the bottom? Yeah, don't walk on that. And it's going to be insulting, and you're going to be kind of annoyed. Like some of what you take in our class, you're like, of course I know that. Do you understand? There are people that don't. Because one of our favorite lines in here is, they don't know to know. And you're making an expectation of them or an assumption that they would, and they don't. We need to take that away. We have to stop just assuming everybody's going to pick this stuff up and make sure they do. It's too important. It's too valuable for all of us to be able to coexist. Can you imagine how much better you would feel in life if you knew people generally were doing the things that they're supposed to be doing? Just like driving, how checked out do you get driving nowadays? Because you're just assuming that going 70 miles an hour with all these people around you in all their various walks of life, that they're all still obeying the rules. It allows you to be you. You can't be you if you can't trust everybody around you is doing, or at least the vast majority of them. That's what our school is. It's different. It's not comfortable in the sense of, oh yeah, because it's going to feel kind of insulting. But that's because we have to. We can't, you have to just assume, hey, this is a stop sign. It means stop. It has to be taught, and then it has to be experienced. You get them out on the road. Okay, what do we do when we get here? We stop. Very good. That's what needs to happen. Okay? So there's basically 4 fundamental tenets that we think in our school are common themes that every person should have. They are health, money, survival, and career or leadership. These 4 common ideas are basically all of humans need to know this stuff, right? It's just how you function as an adult. You need to know these things. It doesn't matter what you do with the various things, but you need to know them. You can no longer just assume that somebody's going to pick it up along the way. We all need to get on the same page. So we're going to address those 4 things. And I break them down, and I know you can't read a lot of this, but you can go onto the website and you can take a look at it because we lay it all out for you so that you understand what the school is. It's a series of classes on each of these concepts. They're 15 to 20 minute videos. This one's a little longer because I'm trying to explain everything to start. But they're short videos where you can go in and just like, hey, let's make sure that I actually understand this. Don't expect it. Don't assume it. It's not insulting to go ahead and make sure you actually understand something. That is knowledge. Do you understand? Right now, you might have information. You need to do something with it so that you gain knowledge, so you can trust the stuff in your brain. Less assumptions, more proof. Go and learn the thing. Make sure you understand it. Because eventually, somewhere down the road, you might be a parent one day, and then you got to teach it to them. And if you don't know it now, who's going to teach it to them? The classes are fairly simple, right? There's a workbook that goes along with it so that you can actually do physical stuff with it. There are study after study that shows that when you write stuff down and not just hear it in class, your ability to understand it goes up exponentially. So the workbook is there for you to physically do something with the information. It's the driving test part of the rules of the road. Okay? So don't just listen to the video and be like, okay, that's cool, right? Apply yourself a little bit, force yourself to kind of make sure you can do it. You need them both. You need them both. Okay? We also do in the school, we do what we would call classroom talks or business talks, where I come in and kind of explain simple concepts that everybody should know. And you're like, well, how does that help my business? If people are fundamentally more confident in who they are and understanding, and you get everybody in your business on the same page, you have a better business. But if you just assume that I brought in all these people from all walks of life and they all understand all this stuff, you're wrong. So stop doing that. Just get them all on the same page. If you got to insult their intelligence a little bit, fine. But that way, at least everything is stated. And then if the rules are broken, everybody understands why and how. So we can do that. We can work with you to come out and teach specific things for your school. We call it a business boot camp. That's kind of our way that we phrase it. But we will tailor it to your needs, specifically what you think your people need to understand, because you need to get your own people on the same page with your business, right? Or even in your classroom. Okay. We also do one-on-one mentorship. It's maybe you're struggling with a little bit in life and you don't need therapy. It's not about an emotional state. It's like, I don't know where to go with my life. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to build my house, right? Or I don't even know how to build a foundation. What is this foundation you keep talking about? What are these concepts, right? What are these characters? I don't know what they are. I don't know how to do that. Come work with us. That's the whole point. That's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to build you into a more sturdy structure of self so that when you're out there in the world, you can be the thing that you want to be. You have the greatest chance of success. You have the best probability of being your best self, something we love to bring up in here. And our best self is not always necessarily even our best day or our best life. Our best self is when you go to bed at night, you feel content with the person you were that day. You gave it your best shot. You did the best with the information you were given. That's where we want to be, because if everybody is elevating, right, society's getting better. If we get back on the same page and we don't have so many expectations that are unrealistic, we have a better overall life. Okay. So what I'm basically I skipped it. No, I didn't. What I'm trying to do is I'm asking you to come join us and help us put the common back in common sense. Help us make the best version of you possible, because that best version actually elevates everyone else. Thank you.